my phone to say, when we get a traffic safety commission.
To have some of those kids or
Well,
him or his
him
board,
and
yeah.
get everybody else there, right? We got a plan, we just don't have the vehicle delivered yet. So they were playing
Well, I'm not gonna sit down until I have a
So
thing in front of me.
that's Commissioner Thompson via phone. But now she's in person and that's Commissioner Wood.
Welcome.
Motown, they were playing Motown. It's on Camuin from 3 to 4 a day.
Why didn't you call me and tell me? Oh, I was out walking, never mind.
Well, there you go, but,
I didn't know anybody knew about it. Know about it.
Sorry.
you don't know Motown?
Are you kidding?
Oh, that's.
We've got country, we've got nineties, we've got rock, we've got big hair bands.
Okay, honey, no, we're taking.
I'm
you
not-
out. We're.
I mean, so is it an Ella Fitzgerald thing? Cause I love Ella Fitzgerald, but
Well, that's a way long time ago.
You know what?
yes, exactly.
Large CD.
Oh, I've got a bunch of Motown CDs.
I have 60
Do I break it to them that I don't have a CD player?
in your car.
Stop embarrassing us.
I'm a Pandora and yeah.
Yeah, just a reminder that we're going to continue the BSO presentation.
Okay,
So,
so we're gonna start with that.
yeah, we're just going to continue his.
Do we need to,
The other one first, and then,
okay, and then come
is that
back.
okay?
Oh, yeah, that's fine if you want to switch it.
Then what is it now? Is it?
It was first.
Okay,
but-
that's fine. Yeah,
If
that'll be
you-
fine.
Okay.
All right.
Listen, if you're old enough for a reading laugh. Then we gotta bring you,
Do you notice how big my letters are?
I love it. I love watching everybody else.
The perfect size. Are you guys running away from
I
me?
was gonna say.
Man.
Hi,
Hi,
you know.
nice to meet you.
Mr. Banks. Come on up.
Gee, we barely have a quorum.
I know.
It's enough.
Yeah.
Sitting right next to me. So hopefully it won't be with any fanfare like it was last time.
No, what additional effects, please?
Amazing. Yeah.
That's a good word. Place on that. It was,
I was like, wow, I know that's not my fault. I hope everybody else knows that's not my fault.
We never even thought.
Slapping them on the bus.
yeah.
We have changed things since then, so it will not happen.
Oh, excellent. So you know, we had happened before.
Had
Yeah,
it?
we changed the system, so it will not happen again.
Happened at a park. and Rec.
Oh, yeah, that was that was the first adventure for me. and I've been on the Zoomies for a while.
Unbelievable, unbelievable.
All right, looks like it is at. is it 5?
But
Okay. 5 o'clock, so, work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion. But there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. It looks like first up is the continuation of the biannual update on veteran services.
Thank
Take it
you so
away.
much. I appreciate it. Didn't know if the slides always going to come up here. Sure is. Thank you so much.
And incidentally, this is a seminar on
Twice a year.
Twice a year, yeah. If you want to flip over, you can.
Well, that would be the smart thing to do, wouldn't it?
Easier via.
But I remember the presentation.
All right, so to continue on, we were about halfway through my slide presentation and then I will open up the questions. My introduction, again, I'm born and raised in Warrenton, Oregon. Served in the Air Force for a couple decades and I'm blessed to come back and serve the veterans of my home county. Currently, our operations, you can see here that we have a breakdown by cities of the number of veterans that are registered for representation through the County Veteran Service Office. Total number of veterans in the county, of course. Since I began on February 21st, I have had 146, this is July 16th, I think, 146 people through my office. And I've done 24 home/work visits with veterans, brought on 69 new veterans and filed 69 individual claims. In addition to that, 10 healthcare enrollment, and so many more just 3 days with businesses booming out there for veteran services. The outreach that I've been able to accomplish with this program, there's a twice a month veterans breakfast, which I go to, and then the first Thursday of the month is the one I attend typically, which is followed by the North Coast Veterans Action Coalition. It's a new kind of grassroots organization. Currently it's being chaired by my predecessor, and they speak about veterans issues here in the North Coast area. So I go to give input and then to also bring concerns back from that. In addition to that outreach, I've been working with parole and probation with the sheriff's office, not only to share information at their staff meeting, but also to be a part of the Veteran Court Steering Committee in an effort to bring a veteran court track here for those that's involved individuals that are also veteran. And then radio advertisement, just to get the word out there, plus in our story and article, help to bring folks in to the office. And as a result of that, in this time frame, I've had that's been the total number of VA dollars that have come into the county. I did notice that the monthly payments, when I was working on my annual report, the monthly payments, they only show a one-time payment. So if the program we use does not automatically compound that by the number of months in the date range. Over the last fiscal year, we averaged $219,500-ish a month in VA dollar coming to our county on top of those retroactive payments. And this is just again for the time frame that I was here, and the retroactive pay or the total over the past fiscal year is over $1 million of VA dollars to our county.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, how far back can the retroactive dollars go for each veteran?
To the best of my knowledge, there is no statute of limitations for a time frame. If a veteran, say, filed a claim after getting out of the service in 1970, and the VA didn't catch up and they didn't get paid until 2023, and that date of effectiveness was maintained back to 1970, then to the best of my understanding, they would be paid on the duration.
Wonderful to hear.
In this past year, as I've been going through the annual report, in the tens of thousands are some of the retroactive payments that I've seen. I saw one, I think that was close to $20,000 in the retroactive.
Thank you.
I know that some veterans are so impacted, not only by their service, but other circumstances that when they're homeless, it's I want to say a sharper drop, a quicker drop to get into a situation like that because of the pre-existing emotional load on it. Do you have a way to get out and deal with veterans who aren't housed?
Absolutely. I have to share an office with CCA, Monthly Community Action Homeless Liaison. And we do a monthly veteran by name this meeting in which we get on the line with VA representatives, as well as other local helping agency representatives. And we go name by name of our unhoused veterans in the county that we know about. So we're constantly on the lookout for unhoused veterans in the county. And we track them specially to ensure that they are taking the most advantage of the benefits that are available to them. Once a month, we need to discuss that. So we're constantly updating that and trying to keep good tabs on them to ensure that we can help get them housed, or at least in the best living life situation is available to them with all the benefits of it. Oh, I gotta go back one slide here. Okay. The next slide here, future operations. August 25th, I have my 6-month milestone for accreditation. It's a 1-year process with Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs. Essentially what that means is I'm learning the job as I'm doing the job, and everything that I do is scrutinized and passed through the training and certification officer at Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs. So all of my claims and all that work that I do, it creates a little bit more lag time in the process of submitting a claim, usually 24 hours at most, to submit a claim, but it's getting a lot of eyes on and giving me a lot of training as I go. But certainly by this time next year, I will be fully accredited veteran certified BSL. In addition to that, I am increasing my outreach efforts as the high service demand increases. But with that, essentially, I come in here and a lack of knowledge creates a slower moving process for each individual veteran situation, which is always unique. But as I get better and as I take care of, there was a little bit of a backlog because there was a gap in service. I'm caught up on that, but as we bring all of that together and I get into a more steady operations tempo, I'm able to get out more to kind of do what is my second priority, which is draw veterans to the services and the benefits that they're entitled to. So it's an ebb and flow that I'm engaging in right now, but my service demand is decreasing, so I'm able to start getting out into more outreach opportunities. The third point on here is, along with all this, I'm constantly trying to determine where the need is the most. If my location and hours at Classic Community College is sufficient to reach the maximum number of veterans, I'll stay there. However, if I have a lot of veterans driving in from Seaside, then I will look for Michigan Seaside part-time. Or if perhaps out in the back areas of Olney, or, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on all the more rural areas of our rural county.
Westport.
Napa, yes, Napa and Westport. I was thinking more out towards Jewel. Yes, there it is, the more rural areas. You think, looking for it. So you think I'd remember that now? Anyway, no, I want to be able to meet the veterans where they are. Happy to do home visits and all that stuff, whatever's most convenient for them, especially with our more geographically separated populations. When they're older and not so able to get to me, I try to make it a point to get out to the backside of the county and help people out that need it. And that's just a constant assessment of where the needs are and meet them. And then finally, here is service capacity. That's just saying the demand versus a 40-hour work week. Is there enough of a demand to warrant petitioning for another full-time equivalent or something like that? That's just something that I'm assessing, and 6 months to a year. Well, I'm about 6 months now, but a year through the process to really get a handle on it and determine, what does my backlog look like and how many number of hours, a week does that backlog translate into, whether or not that is a part-time or full-time equivalent to ask for. And of course, I understand that the data needs to be there to validate the manpower position.
So if I could add, I was in a meeting last night with a veteran activist down in Pullman. So there are 2,800 Vietnam veterans he thought, or veterans in Tillamook. His goal was to have 280 of them be members of the VFW.
Right, Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Yeah, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And I thought, well, that was interesting, and I didn't know if you had, I would call them community partners like that here in Clatsop County.
There is the Astoria Legion, American Legion, the Seaside American Legion, the Warpen VFW. I'm still,
Cannon Beach.
I'm still making those connections and trying to get out to them. It's kind of been playing tag with the Warpen VFW. I've talked to them on the phone, but we haven't connected in person. I was recently in a meeting with the American Legion Auxiliary for Astoria, to connect with them and to show them, or to give them information on what service they provide. And then also within to the Seaside Legion as well, but, again, that's part of that, increasing the outreach efforts, because there is a lot of, there's a lot of administrative claim work that's going on right now, so it's kept me trying to, again, get in the black, if you will, on that, to get everyone satisfied there, and then get out as I can to increase outreach. And my ultimate goal in this position is to get in contact with the different organizations, but to cross-link them so that it's not me supporting the veterans of our county as the single point of failure, single point of contact, but so that they have an interwoven support network amongst each other, so that they know which organization or individual even they can reach out to if a veteran that comes to them has a specific problem. And I'm not sure, I know it's very vague, very broad, but I want them to be able to feel at liberty and have the information of who they can reach out to support their needs, and again, me not being the single point of failure.
Well, so we're looking at Jewel, now we have a clinic at Jewel, and we're thinking of students and their families. But, I wonder if that's another kind of programmatic outreach activity. But I'm pretty sure Napa needs a VFW hall, pretty sure.
And with our fire hall there, but we also have the Grange where we have our senior meal location. Would be a good outreach location for you, is where our seniors go to receive meals.
And that is.
That's in Benson. Yeah. It's in Grange. And then I think about Northwest Senior and Disability Services as a good contact for you if you haven't already gone that direction, just because they have, just among their casework, they probably have a pretty well-versed knowledge of the senior needs in our community. So
I've been in contact with one of the supervisors over there.
Good.
at Conflict Seniors and Disability Services.
Good.
Yeah, and that was my thought too, driving by the different ranges out there, at the big brown building there in Spencer, right? Is it?
honestly, it's
It's
next
awful.
to the market.
Yeah, just off of 30.
I drive by and I'm like, oh.
And I saw it there when I was traveling to the airport, and I thought, wow, that may be a good, if they have like a community rummage sale or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
just to kind of stand there and say, here's my card, here's my business information if you want to.
And they do monthly, I don't know, rummage sales or
Yeah.
markets, there pretty regularly. But I appreciate that you are branching out and creating relationships, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing.
Happy to do it. I'm honored to be able to do it. It's great to.
One of the reasons that I'm, because of the day before the volunteer army services, I think there are many more that's hidden in the older population. Particularly for the seniors and disabilities, because I think there are a lot of people who I won't even say my age, but of the Vietnam era, who aren't even aware. I know, especially in rural areas, they're not even aware that services are available to them. So anything we can do to be present in those areas. I think is really important.
Yeah, I agree, and it's. Anecdotally, I spoke to a veteran and spouse today, Vietnam veteran, who's not service connected disability at all, and in light of the PACT Act, if you have hypertension, you're supposed to even orange program presumptively connected, so, yes, my desire is to get as many of them connected to the benefits that they earn in service for their country. Support them in life, but to support any of those who survive them, in the event of their past.
So maybe this coming November, when it's Veterans Day, maybe we could, at our November meeting, do something a little jazzy or a little more fleshed out. Be a signing of it. I mean, we're looking for a logical time to do something a little extra, to raise the
Sounds like a
visibility.
Patty Joe issue. so.
It sounds, well, I was thinking about Patty stuff, and I think it's very appropriate for that to be a continuous message from the county.
And he and I we are in contact pretty regularly, so, we're working, right now, working to ensure that there's much word about the deadline for the PACT Act, is put out to our county. That's the current drive.
Yeah,
Because a lot of people are probably not aware. So
And it's not that our veterans will not be entitled to benefits under the PACT Act. It's just that getting in before the August 9th deadline, if you will give them a retroactive service connection to August 10th, 2022. Whereas if they come in after that, they're eating away at that timeline.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have any further questions?
Thanks for coming to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Knocked it out of the park the second.
A lot calmer and quieter. Thank you so much. I appreciate this
Thank you.
opportunity.
If you mind, maybe we could hold the next two out of order. The MAC group is just me talking with Alyssa, since we have Superintendent Fritz here, we can maybe have them come first so that they can leave after that, so. So I'll go ahead and give a little overview of the ARPA funding, because as your board knows, we've taken a really flexible approach to the concept plan. We knew when we received the money that there was many potential purposes for it, and we also knew that the need was gonna be greater than the money available. And so we came to your board with a funding plan that had that was consistent with the legislation, but also had flexibility wired into it. And so, as you know, we've been making investments over time. There's a spreadsheet that in your packet that kind of chronicles what the uses, what the allowable uses are. A lot of ours was on the impacts of coronavirus, and whether it's the shelter systems, childcare, economic development for the SBDC program, mental health crisis response, affordable housing. The second one has been really focusing on investments in public health, and some of the other downstream issues like the Jewel school-based health center, and some emergency preparedness resiliency funding. And then the fourth is the one that's really been the most flexible pieces, which is the infrastructure pieces. And so, as you know, we set aside money for the rural internet out in the Jewel, Vine Maple, Elsie area, and that's evolved over time, and certainly it continues to evolve. And I have followed up with Charles Deister and the staff that are working within Clatsop County that are boots on the ground, and I are going to be talking next week, I believe, about how to extend a little bit of area out in Jewel that is not covered. They're already out there, but there's just a little bit more. So So we'll be having conversations about that. We have some resources in here for Westport Sewer District, anaerobic digester, countywide septage. So there's been a lot of investment areas. So as these numbers have kind of played themselves out, though, there has been some additional capacity to do other things. And there's two opportunities I want to just briefly touch base. And I think we have talked about them both before. The first one I was going to mention is City of Warrenton. You know, typically counties don't pay for city infrastructure. It's not a thing. But in this case, because we have ARPA dollars available and because the city of Warrenton is going to be a critical provider of housing, it's just a basic geography issue. We have been talking with the city about investing in some of their water infrastructure needs that will facilitate development along Ridge Road and some other areas. And if we can get this infrastructure developed and there is development, then that's a win-win for everybody. And there are some developments that are being discussed that are in the range of, 400 housing units. So these are not small developments. And so with your board's agreement, I'll be coming back with funding agreement, IGA, with Warrenton for a $250,000 contribution. The city is also matching that, and then they'll start working on that water infrastructure issue. And so that's one. The second one, I don't know, Superintendent Fritz, if you want to join me, is that we received a request from Napa School District to help them with their water infrastructure issues too, as part of a larger capital project. And so I'll just let Superintendent Fritz kind of give you an overview of the project. And what I would be recommending is a $150,000 contribution to their project to help them get the sprinkler systems and the other systems that they need. So.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good to be here with the commissioners. Just wanted to share a little bit of information with you about the water infrastructure system that's before you. I first want to mention a couple of people who are here with me. Fire Chief Kurt Donaldson is with us. He's the Napa Fire Chief. I believe on the screen or on the system is Michelle Finn, the Vice Chair of our school board, and Ann G'day is with us as well. She lives here in Astoria and is our owner's rep for the construction projects that we're working on right now. That concludes my presentation. You can ask me questions or I may refer them to them. But each of these people are supportive of the project. As you are probably aware, Napa School District facilities were constructed in the first half of the last century. The original water line onto the site is a 4-inch water line, which serves both of our schools. And it's inadequate to install fire sprinklers within our schools. As you're aware, we're constructing some new facilities. Right now, the water line isn't able to support sprinklers in those schools, but that's obviously a code requirement, something we plan to do. Additionally, the existing schools also don't have fire sprinklers. And so this project will do a couple of different things to address that. One, we will be installing a 10-inch water line onto the site. And if you do your math, that's more than like quintupling the amount of gallons per minute that can come onto our site, because it has to do with area and volume and all that. I'm a former math teacher, I could go into that, but I won't. We also plan to install a pump to boost the gallon per minute flow onto the site to meet the standards of the updated fire sprinkler suppression system. Right now, we're served by Wickiup Water District, and the flow of the street with their line on Old Highway 30 isn't sufficient to basically produce a gallon per minute up the hill onto our site. And so we need to get a pump in there to make that happen. Our plan is to install fire sprinklers within the new construction on the campus, and then also to install fire sprinklers in the existing buildings within the district, but that needs to be in a phased fashion based on resources. And then the additional pieces, we plan to connect the on-site fire hydrants and standpipes to the enhanced system as we develop it. The Napa School District facilities are more than just schools. They are one of the primary gathering sites for people in the East County.
Our facilities used for gatherings, family reunions, weddings, memorials, church services, Pilates classes, athletic events, and a multitude of other events in that part of the county. An investment in this not only supports the school and our operation with our children, but also the community as a whole. The Napa school site is listed as part of the county's emergency management plan as a place for sheltering in case of need, especially in the event of a tsunami in the area. Currently, the school district does not have adequate resources to complete the full scope of work that we desire with this project, but we are hoping that with these funds, it will enhance our ability and it'll help us expand the scope of what we're able to do at this point in time. I just want to thank you all for your consideration of this. And if you have any questions, we're glad to address those.
Definitely.
I put on the seismic rehabilitation grant advisory fund committee. So there's a meeting in August because they want to ask for more money because the need is so great. So I hope you're continue to be tuned into that and to use that as a resource. And I am happy to be your advocate, although there is a whole apparatus of engineers who review all this, but I can, when you have a compelling.
But I owe you a thank you because we have a seismic rehabilitation grant that was issued to us recently in the amount of about $2.5 million. And we're using that to reinforce our gym, cafeteria, and library.
So keep it up.
Yeah, we will. And thank you all for supporting our fire department because they also got a grant last year to build the firehouse.
That's right, because this is the advantage of having those longer term relationships, being able to advocate. When there's excellent staff, excellent program, the legislature's been very generous, but there's such a compelling community need that is a pleasure to not only respond to, but to invite or exhort community members to continue to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I know the resources are limited. We got it on the third try. So we know that there wasn't enough money to go around the first couple of times. So.
The engineers have to look at it, but yeah, the persistence of that, but there's a meeting in August to have that group look at, do we look to push the legislature or urge the legislature to expand the resources available because the need is so great. So for fire, for police, for school, so we want you to have that money.
Thank you.
And just to share with the commissioners, a personal note or less personal, but an observation that I've had of our school district and our current administration. They've been very efficient in their funding sources. They've used their monies very well through the budgeting and in reflections of capital improvements. And so this isn't a funding request that is because of misuse of funds in other places. This is a funding request because they are doing the absolute most that they can possibly do with the dollars that they get. And I am forever impressed with the administration, but also with their school board and with their budget committee on being creative, thoughtful, and very, I don't know, forward thinking. They're not waiting for things to fail. They're trying to fix them before they fail. So
Proactive, yeah.
very proactive. And so it's nice to see. And so this funding request is not, it's just, we're a small community.
Sorry.
The other issue I think that we have to increasingly be turning our attention to are the sites that will be useful in the case of a major earthquake or tsunami. And we have to start looking at these safe sites and really investing in them throughout the county, wherever we can. So to me, putting them under that rubric is even another reason. Also, might also be a reason to be able to have a little bit more money. There are other funding streams coming down from the Fed that might be appropriate to. So let's all keep a watch out for that and make sure that we can toughen up these Monday with points in the future.
So if your board's amenable, we'll be coming back at the next board meeting that we're preparing for, which I think is August 6th, with an agenda item, so.
Thank you for joining us.
On fine application.
Okay, so we have one more item.
Excellent, and it's,
I'm gonna change route.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change my location so I can.
so I have to
Directly.
admit that that was probably the children calling me. I lost.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the MAC group a little bit. We mentioned this as, it's really an artifact of the recent, emergency declaration from the governor. So we're just gonna kind of walk through what the process has been, where they are. What I will tell you is there's still work going on, and so we don't have the final answer, but I'll walk you through kind of what has been happening. So as a little background, 11 counties that are really mostly urban were part of the continuum of care that were allocated $126.5 million for homeless services. The county board, after 3 tries, declared an emergency. We were added. But when we were added, there was no financial resources that came with us being added to the declaration. What they did offer us was technical assistance, which has come from the form of a consultant. The balance of the state, which are 25 counties, they were allocated $24 million. So the state is using the incident management structure, so that's the MAC. So the MAC was the vehicle that the state OEM put into place for the counties to have a process to identify how they would approach the homeless crisis. So what their local plan was. The MAC is a group by definition that includes technical experts. And so we have the providers of homeless services, we have the cities, the county, we've invited others that I'll go through here, but on the MAC, we have Classic Community Action, Harbor, Northwest Housing Authority was invited. The little asterisks are those that are actively participating. So no surprises, both of the hospitals are also actively participating. So that is the group that's been talking about how do we spend whatever state resources might be coming down for homelessness. The executive order really focused on 3 areas, which was how to prevent homelessness, increase shelter capacity, and then to rehouse as many folks as possible. So that's kind of what the focus has been with the MAC too. So we've been using the guidance that came out of this executive order. So what we were told was, don't think about the money, plan for what your needs are. So MAC did a good job of that. They planned to the need, not to the funding source. And they came up with roughly an $8 million plan. And the $8 million, again, touches a lot of those organizations that was on the previous page, because they are the service providers. But it deals with street outreach, data collection, which is a big issue, as you can imagine. Emergency shelter component, rehousing, which is really rental assistance, is a good way to really look at that, and then administration of these various programs. So that was the $8 million solution that came about through the MAC process.
I'm gonna hold you on this for a third. When you say an emergency shelter, are you thinking of a brick and mortar physical that we don't have, or we have that will be reused?
So the Columbia Inn is
That's it.
an
That's it.
example. Lifeboat would like to expand into a shelter. There's additional work being done in South County regarding Helping Hands expanding and also having a micro housing project. So I'm gonna kind of go through that here.
Well, I saw that big number and I wanted to-
Yeah, so basically, how that $8 million plan was really focused on these three service providers. Plaza Community Action, who was gonna be focusing on the emergency shelter. 35 beds, which would be at the Columbia Inn, and 15 beds that are down in South County. Harbor was focused on emergency shelter, which are 23 beds over here at Columbia Inn, so there's 58 estimated beds over at Columbia Inn. And then Lifeboat Services has a plan and it's been working with the city to allow sheltering at their downtown location, and that would be an additional 23 beds. So when you look at these additional beds, I mean, that's a big increase in what is available right now. For the state, what they were really looking for is for the balance of the 25 counties was to generate 100 shelter beds.
Oh,
Just we are,
What?
yeah, so we are, well, I think there's a real misunderstanding of the rural areas,
Oh.
which is why,
Yeah, I've never heard that said before. In all
which is why not being included in the first round and actually being party to some of those original resources. Clatsop County is very uniquely situated. We have more homeless than a lot of other urban counties. And just in real numbers, and the per capita is obviously off the chart. So anyhow, so then what happens? So, totally, there's about 95 shelter beds just within Clatsop County that would be coming online soon. And so, so then what we found out is that there's really $1.5 million available to the county. So this doesn't include shelter bed allocation, which they've set aside roughly $5 million that will be allocated at a future date to these 26 county or 25 counties for shelter beds. But what they've allocated to Clatsop County is roughly 1.5 million.
So I had an expectation, I guess, or a wish that we would have been, had our actual unhoused percentage rate per capita looked at and had that applied to these numbers so that the allotment that we received would be more reflective of our need versus it sounds like everything is being split out equally among the counties that are left. Is that?
I think
I
that
wish you
there's-
could tell me that
yeah.
I'm wrong, but
No,
I'm
I think that there's some metrics behind how it's being allocated, but obviously, given where we are at the state, our allocation is not
reflective of
being
our need at all.
adjusted based upon what the need is.
Can I just say one thing? Because I've been in these housing conversations at AOC and the counties that were in that initial, take them up to the penthouse were the ones, it's insider baseball. It's the counties and the commissioners who have been actively lobbying for those for all these years, and not just going to the committee meetings, but lobbying legislators and the governor's office. Those are the folks who got in where there was good pay.
Well, yeah, I think what has happened, and I think it's really the urban centric nature of the state, is that they have all of these 26 rural counties in one continuum of care organization. And so it was easy for them just to say, all the urban areas that are in these multi-county continuum of care organizations are going to go because there's this perception that their burden in serving the homeless is higher than ours. And so, and it is true that out of the 25 counties, the burden is not equal over all counties because every county is unique. But certainly ours is verifiably higher than anybody else's.
Mhm.
And so what we did get is 228,000 for administration, and we have almost $1.3 million for rapid rehousing, which is again, really comes down to kind of rental assistance. So the MAC developed the $8 million plan. We found out there was 1.5. They're still working through what they would do under this 1.5 million umbrella. All the direction they have gotten so far is that you have two set asides, one for administration, one for rapid rehousing. Now we have to figure out what we're gonna do in those areas. So, but you know, the state has allocated 19.5 million out of the 24 million. So they will allocate the rest for emergency shelters. But again, when you're allocating less than $5 million to all the other 25 counties, there isn't going to be big numbers to help us with the shelter system. So then the MAC is still meeting. We are talking about it. Obviously, we have the ribbon cutting for the Columbia Inn next week. So that's moving forward. There's a lot of progress on a lot of these other ones. The Red Lion in Seaside. It's a partnership between CBH, CPCCO, and CCA, and that is anticipated to be open in the summer of 2024. Esperanza Village is a micro shelter. It's being paid for with a lot of the burn funds, and that is slated to be open in the fall of 2023. Helping Hand Seaside is also burn funded, and that's fall of 2023. Lifeboat, wants to expand the navigation center at the Methodist Church and then have a shelter present downtown. So it would move the navigation services out of the downtown core and have the shelter be at the current location. Iron Tribe is in the county now. They have a couple houses, one in Astoria and one in Gearhart, and they're really focused on families and individuals who are in recovery. And so that's part of the continuum of resources. Clatsop Behavioral Healthcare, as you know, is working on a permanent supportive housing over by Kentucky Fried Chicken. So it'll always be known as next to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
May I interject something about the good news? I was asked by an unnamed person at CBH. I was told early on about the issues about a very complicated thing that I had never heard of in a property transaction before, where when that property was sold, apparently there was almost a right of first refusal or the kind of thing.
The title, in the title.
And it was crazy. I had really honestly never, in all my years.
So that you can't put a Popeye in the cafe.
Which of course, if you really believe in the intersection of a Wendy's and a Taco Bell, anyway, but, and I actually had the great fortune of speaking with the Popeyes person. Excuse me, I don't do these things.
KFC.
So I'm sorry, all
Popeyes, KFC.
all these guys
The chicken
are the same to me. And I think it really had an influence on their agreement. And I felt that was a really worthwhile endeavor to do, both in writing and then also over the telephone, because with the fact, of course, that I told him that I would, be out there with 150 people carrying signs, that helped a little bit. But really, I mean, it was one of those issues where I think it's always worth picking up the phone and calling people and having a nice conversation with them about what our community is all about. And I think it was a very worthwhile.
Well, I think what we've learned is that getting any housing built is really challenging, and it really takes a lot of pressure points
Does it ever?
to actually get it done. I will just mention the last one is Copeland Commons, which Commissioner Webb is.
Speaking of,
And so Copeland Commons is a downtown asset, and there's conversations about brownfield grants to do some investigation, and then obviously we're also talking with them about some pre-development dollars also. So I guess, part of the story is it has been a little frustrating working through the MAC process. Not because we don't have great participation. I mean, one thing I think is the hallmark, and even the state has recognized, is we have a really strong collaborative team here.
Yeah.
And so, the work that they've done is outstanding. It's just, there's not enough resources, and that troubling issue is not going to go away. There may be, in the short session, obviously, there'll be a lot of advocacy for additional resources, which the county will be there, along with hopefully others. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We'll come back to your board once we can figure out what the plan is for the 1.5, and then what the plan is for the additional money for emergency shelter.
why isn't Owens Adair too on that list?
It could
It
be.
really should be, it
Yeah.
really should be.
So, in fact, I've been communicating with NOAA today because we're talking about timing of a pre-development grant for them too. So it could be. But, part of the story is that sometimes folks don't understand all the things that are actually happening, and there's a lot happening, both on the housing side and on the homeless side. So the other thing I just wanted to mention real quick is that we've been involved in an engagement process called Community Rocket. And it's hospitals, again, business sector, law enforcement from cities, CCCPO, social service providers. And we're really talking about how do we create a lot more of that connective tissue that I talked about between providers, and then what are the tools that they need to really gel as a group. It's one thing to say you're going to collaborate, it's another thing to have all the tools. One of the things that Rocket has been working on, and one of the goals out of the group is to enhance data collection. And it's something that I think we will make huge inroads at. But as you can imagine, once you have these 90+ shelter beds, accessing them becomes really important, and the access points are all over the community. So the more information that's readily available about where there are vacancies, where people can be referred to, how does law enforcement refer them, where do they refer them, where do social services refer them? So that's this team is who is working on some of those issues. So we're not just trying to build beds and pass through the state money. We're trying to create the systems that really are the glue on how we can help those that are most in need in our community.
I would like to see how best we can create a touchstone for our school district also, because they are so very knowledgeable on obviously the families within our community.
And as we work through this, I will share that. So.
The other thing that I was quite happy to learn, I asked Viviana Matthews recently to describe for me kind of their placement system, which in working with NOHA, I had been used to, well, it's a referral from CCA. Well, I was unaware of what that really means when someone goes to CCA and then gets a lot of attention from someone to help them find housing. And that's a process I would love for this board to maybe hear in a work session, because it's much more complicated than I thought it was.
Well, and there's a process called coordinated entry that is defined that people use, that is an intake process. And then CCA follows up with the case management to follow that up. So
Right.
it's a whole.
And I think it would be very helpful, because I think especially as commissioners, we get so many inquiries from citizens about, well, can you help me? Or what does it take? Or what do I have to have? Or, and being able to, I think that there are expectations often when people go to CCA that
they're not gonna leave there with a housing voucher or with an address or, you know, with an appointment. And I think it's something that would really behoove all of us to understand the process for, so that we can do a better job of explaining to our citizens. I'd really love to have a more formalized process description.
We get it with that.
Because I think I think it would really help in our communication.
One output of this group is not just the data sharing, but what you're talking about is information sharing. So the data sharing is for the practitioners. Hey,
Yeah,
how do I get this person to the right place?
right.
The information sharing is more what you're speaking of when the head of the chamber or one of you is asked,
Right.
hey, how do we do this? So that will also be a work product that will have a resource guide for the community.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
More work for PJ to share.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well, I have to say, there's no shortage of work for staff. So, but it's all really good work, and, you know, we're making just huge, steps forward, and, you know, we knew it wasn't gonna be easy. We knew it wasn't gonna be quick, and it really is your board, all of the help you give us, with all of your work, as governing board members, and then all of our partners. I can't say enough, for the commitment, the passion, the wherewithal of our partners. So, we have the right people to tackle this. We just need to continue to express the needs and get the state to the end as we go through this stuff.
Oh, could I ask, I'm going to the local government advisory committee meeting on Friday, and that's the one where the head of DHS and the head of OHA are there. We've had Director Bell from Oregon Housing and Community Services and interim director Garrett from Oregon Emergency Management. And I've listened to the other commissioners trying to get the unspoken stuff. So if there's, number one, if there's anything I need to be saying to anybody at that meeting, just tell me and I'll be happy to carry any message. But number two, the idea that the ones who got the bulk of the money were related to a particular continuum of care. I don't know that I'd ever heard that. Maybe you've said it and I just missed it.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, connecting who gets the money with who's part of what.
Yeah, and I think that was just a choice that they used to use the continuum of cares as a vehicle to identify need. It's not, it isn't a perfect metric though, obviously. And so, and that is what we told the state when they first didn't include us, was that metric it was gonna lose those rural counties that have, you know, a per capita very high and a real number very high homelessness rate. So, you know, I think that we advocate for the county all the time. You do, we do. It's just, there's just a perception at the state that we're all, you know, that the rural counties are kind of homogeneous and the urban counties are, and it's just not the case. So it's,
The coast, that's where we go to play.
it's just something we will continually work on, and
Okay.
so,
Okay, whatever we can do.
again, thank you.
Thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So we will take a small breather, 5-minute break. You're 12.
Don't we want to mute it until we start?
Well, you might have to go through that regular meeting.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Clock.
So they don't burn my house down. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to convene the regular session of our board meeting, July 26, 2023. The Board of Commissioners, as a governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which the body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board, is now meeting in regular session. We will begin with the flag salute. Thank you. Teresa, may we begin with the roll call?
Chair Quila? Excused. Vice Chair Banks? Here. Commissioner Toyoka? Excused. Commissioner Webb? Here. Commissioner Thompson? I'm here.
Excellent. As we have all had a chance to take a look at the agenda, is there any comments?
Nope, just move to approve the agenda as presented, Madam Chair.
Second?
Okay, as there is a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the proclamation, the United States Coast Guard Month Proclamation. Our presenter is Captain M. Scott Jackson, Commanding Officer, USCG Air Station Astoria. If you want to come forward. Sure. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Yes. Yes, have a seat.
Okay,
Thank you for joining us tonight.
my pleasure.
Okay, so
Captain Jackson, if you want to maybe just give a little overview of the Coast Guard and kind of what I hear you do oftentimes.
Sure.
And so,
Sure, I tell you what, Coast Guard community, let me first start by saying what an honor and privilege it is to be here in the chambers today. And just to you know, how we blend in as part of our community here. But, you know, your Coast Guard out here just is so thankful, and I speak from myself too, my family that's out here, and just talking with Commissioner Webb just about her dad, you know, the family, Coast Guard families that are out here, that are out in communities all over the United States, but specifically those that are here. It is such a joy to serve in communities like this that are so welcoming, that are loving, that bring us in as part of the family. One of my 3 watchwords I have is family, foundation, and function. Well, family is the key cornerstone. It's the reason why we do what we do. Whether it's our Coast Guard family, whether it's the local community as a family, it's the reason why we serve. And I just wanted to say thank you so much on behalf of the families the Coast Guard members and all their families that have the privilege and opportunity to live here. Just stated some of the things we do. Obviously, you don't have to go too far to see a lot of the stuff that the men and women that I have the privilege to serve with are doing each and every day. Whether it's going out there and preserving our environment, whether it's preserving our fish stocks that are out there and making sure our good Americans that are out there fishing and doing the business and trying to feed our population are safe while they're doing it. Whether it's protecting those that are coming here to look at the beautiful coast of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, making sure they're safe. We even occasionally do, even though we're the Coast Guard, occasionally do some things inland, as you saw probably on the recent news with the rescue that we did over at Mount Washington in conjunction with the Oregon Search and Rescue and Emergency Management. You know, I could go on and on about the cases that these brave men and women do each and every day, whether it's in their small boats and going out in their 47 motor lifeboats through surf and the surf season, or whether it's helicopters that are taking off each and every day to hoist people out of distress and save them, or it's our cutters that are going and sailing in various parts of the world and keeping drugs off of the streets here locally. You know, it's important stuff that we do each and every day, and it's a privilege to serve in our community every day. And I got a chance to kind of get heads up about this, and I tell you, it just warmed my heart because it shows how much we're appreciated as part of the family in the local community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I just personally want to say I see our Coast Guard children on a regular basis, and I absolutely adore them, and it's always sad to see them leave every 3 years, but it's my day job that
But then they come back and they serve in those communities like Commissioner
Yeah,
Webb here, whose dad
that's
was
correct.
in the Coast Guard.
Yep.
So.
It's wonderful, so thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have a motion? Yes. Not wearing mine.
I move to approve the resolution and order proclaiming August 2023, the entire month of August, not just August 4th, Coast Guard, as United States Coast Guard Month, and I authorize the chair to read, then sign the proclamation.
Second, Madam Chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. In the matter of proclaiming August to be United States Coast Guard Month, whereas August 4th, 2023 marks the 233rd birthday of the U.S. Coast Guard, and whereas the Coast Guard is one of the oldest organizations of the federal government, established in 1790, and whereas the citizens of Clatsop County, Oregon share a rich history with the United States Coast Guard and have provided a home for the Coast Guard since 1915, and whereas Clatsop County is part of the U.S. Coast Guard's 13th District and Sector, Columbia River, and whereas U.S. Coast Guard Sector Columbia River and Air Station Astoria conduct life-saving operations across the entire Pacific Northwest, and whereas the cities of Astoria and Warrenton serve as home to the U.S. Coast Guard Air Station Astoria, Coast Guard Base Astoria, and the Coast Guard cutters Alert, Steadfast, and Elm, and whereas the designation of the city of Astoria in Clatsop County as a Coast Guard city was renewed in 2021, and whereas we are stronger because of the dedication and support we receive from the United States Coast Guard, and whereas the people of the Coast Guard contribute many intangible benefits to our local community in addition to the services that they provide. They are our neighbors, our friends, as well as role models and mentors for our young people. Now therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners wishes the United States Coast Guard a happy 233rd birthday and does hereby proclaim August 2023 as United States Coast Guard Month in Clatsop County, and invites all community members to join in this observance, honoring the dedication and the service of the men and women in the U.S. Coast Guard in our community. Dated this day, 26th of July, 2023. Thank you.
Semper
Thank
Paratus.
Yep.
Always ready.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so very much. It's a privilege to be here.
Yeah, that one had your name all over it, didn't it?
I'm afraid it did.
So was your father stationed here?
No,
No?
no.
All right. Teresa, we are moving on to business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings or any topic of the county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
Yes, there is.
Excellent.
I have Meredith Wadlington. If you could please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Meredith Wadlington. I live at 2746 Southeast 47th Avenue in Portland, Oregon.
Go ahead and share your comment.
Hi, as I said, my name is Meredith Wadlington. I'm a policy coordinator at Unite Oregon. Unite Oregon is a statewide nonprofit organization led by Black, Indigenous, people of color, immigrants, and refugees, rural communities, and people experiencing poverty. We've partnered with the other statewide organization, the Health Justice Recovery Network, to ensure Measure 110 is implemented in the way voters intended it to be. So I'm just here to give you a quick update about Measure 110. 2023 is the year that Measure 110 is finally getting on firm footing. New data has shown that a dramatic increase in the number of people receiving addiction services funded by Measure 110. Tens of millions of dollars are going to direct services instead of an expensive and ineffective criminal justice system. Lives are being saved, families are becoming more stable, and communities in every county in Oregon are starting to see progress in addressing the root causes of addiction. In June, the state legislature passed the House Bill 2513, the Hope and Recovery Act. It's now Oregon law. What it does is it keeps our state's commitment to increase the availability of free local services for people struggling with substance use. It does this through increased oversight and accountability, more timely funding, distribution, and redoubling the implementation of proven public health approaches to addiction services and treatment to make Measure 110 basically more effective, transparent, and accountable. Last month, the Oregon Health Authority released a second quarter report of the number of Oregonians across the state receiving services through Measure 110 instead of entering the criminal justice system. The report, which can be found on OHA's website, and I would love to send to you afterward, showed that the number of people seeking substance use treatment through Measure 110 increased by 44%. It also shows that people in recovery who were provided housing services increased by more than 125%, and employment services increased by 136%. Oregon's public health approach gives us a tool that no other state in the country has. It's getting to the root cause of addiction and ending the revolving jail door that keeps people trapped in addiction and despair. I would love to follow up. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Excellent. Thank you for your comments this evening. Unfortunately, your time is up.
That's all the people we have signed up for public comment.
Excellent, Clerk of the Board. Do we have anybody signed up for in-person testimony?
No, we do not.
Okay, so moving on to the consent calendar. Everyone has had a chance to take a look at it? Okay.
To adopt the consent calendar, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I second.
Excellent. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent calendar. All right. Next up is our commissioner.
We have to vote.
Oh, haha. We have to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to Commissioner's report. Let's go ahead and start with Commissioner Webb.
I have just several quick things. I wanted to mention that we received the AOC legislative summary this week, and like the bureaucratic fool that I am, of course, I print it out every year and read it carefully. I really would recommend it. It's fascinating, not only because of what passed, but of what didn't pass. Often you get when something doesn't pass, it's not going to be the last time you see it. And so it's always, I just think it's, for those of us who can't sit and watch the legislative session, it's really a very worthwhile thing to kind of skim through. One of the things that I have been receiving a lot of comments about is the situation with the DHS building in Astoria. You've probably heard the various things that it's actually a privately owned building that the state rents. And it is, there apparently are some air quality issues. And it got to the point where they had to actually turn everybody out. And I have to say, and I have told the state this, that they did not handle this well at all, because our citizens have no information. People are going literally to the front door and knocking on the door and not getting in when they need services. And I can say that the workforce services are all being housed in the trailers in the front. So, and that's the part of that building that I relate to most as a member of the NOW board. But, and I've spoken with a couple of people at DHS. They have promised to get back to me to talk to us a little bit about communicating with our public about all the services that are not available. There are people relocating. I was at CBH the other day, and there are like 3 or 4 folks from the building who are now housed in Warrenton at CBH, and people aren't even. It's really hoping that maybe we could get our communication expert to help us with some of this, because people are really literally not knowing where to go. And so that's been, I have the usual monthly reports from OED about employment. There's nothing terribly startling about it. As you all probably know, our unemployment rate continues to fall. Employment continues to go up. There were actually, I think, about 20 jobs created in Clatsop County just over the past month. There has been something also established. NOW has received, as part of their federal grant structure, a program that is getting together employers from each county and about their needs for employees in the future. I think we're hearing there was a lot in the recent federal legislation, several of the legislations that were passed by Congress this year that talk about the future workforce. I think we're finally getting some discussion about the fact that the future workforce is going to be different. We're not going to need as many coal miners in the future, and we are going to need people with a lot more advanced computer skills, even without a college degree. So I think there's a lot coming down the pike, and there's been this kind of committee of employers here has been organized by Kevin Leahy from the community college, and we're going to be talking primarily about future workforce needs, and that's pretty exciting. The last thing I have is that in the tourism field, you all have heard me singing the praises of the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, which is an entity that is funded by Travel Oregon and services our tourism supporters and services throughout the coast. And they are in the midst of helping create a couple of things that they've really focused on, one of which is better access to the beach and to trails for people with disabilities, and that is already happening in Clatsop. And they're also doing a lot more to encourage programs for people to come to the county and have a working vacation in terms of perhaps trail maintenance or beach cleanup, or some of the things that are important to our environment, to make people a little bit more sensitive to the fact that they're in a very fragile, right word, but in a sensitive environment, and that we all need to work at it often to keep it pristine and as wonderful as it is. I have to say that one of the things that has come up at one of our recent meetings of coastal tourism folks is the fact that so many, even in our state parks, so many of our trails have been really adversely impacted by our bad weather in the last couple of winters. And if it weren't for the Coast Guard, who has saved, like, just in the North Coast, I think they've picked something like 5 people off of very terrible situations, having fallen off what we used to consider safe trails. You know, in the urban parts of the county, with the Cascade Mountains, they have their fire departments and their relief people have helicopters and things. So we have the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard is always just incredibly responsive to us in terms of saving people who are sometimes clutching a cliff, literally, to stay alive. And I think the Coast Guard even picked up somebody's big dog recently who was with them. So thank you for letting me get that in.
No problem. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear a lot of Coast Guard helicopters out my front window. And I think some of it is trails. I think some of it is human behavior. Because when I feel like the cranky grandma right now. I drive down the road and I see people standing on the metal signs, bouncing around on them, or standing on the walls that are supposed to be stood behind so that people keep themselves safe. They want to get that photograph. And I think education is part of what needs to happen. And I'm going to segue because I was down in Tillamook last night. There's Senator Weber got the Oregon Wilson River Highway 6 study funded. Unfortunately, that study was funded out of money that came from somebody else's transportation improvement plan update. So the problem with ODOT is they want to do good work. They're capable of very good work. They're underfunded. So in a variety of committees and situations and circumstances, we'll be working together. I'm the ACT chair, and so that's part of what we're talking about there. There are other committees, and I won't go into all that because there's several forming in order to look at how does ODOT have adequate funds to do operation and maintenance, number one, but number two, how do we do not just engineering, which is very expensive, how do we do education to help, I would say, modify human behavior, and then how do we look at enforcement? Because how many state police, Sheriff Phillips in Clatsop County, is it one or more? So you're not on the record when you're talking from back there, you know. Just saying.
All right, I'd have to talk to Lieutenant Hazenkamp about their current staffing, but I know that they're down several positions on their road patrol side. I think most of their game now, but I think they're probably at about half staff.
Thank you, Sheriff Phillips. So if we're looking at half staff for the enforcement on rural Clatsop County highways, it's daunting because some people come here to behave well, and other people are so happy that they want to do things that put themselves and other people at risk. how do we deal with that? And that's part of what ODOT deals with. So kudos to Senator Weber and getting that study. We're still hoping that we can have a traffic safety committee. We're still talking at Northwest Act about not just ODOT, but about the transit district, because at the meeting earlier in July, we had the chair of the Sunset Empire Transit District, which, you know, has really had some administrative difficulties, and the ODOT staffer. There was a coverage by the newspaper that helped raise public awareness and, I would say, focus the expression of public concern. Senator Johnson came and spoke. Astoria City Councilor Elizabeth Adams came and spoke, so that we're getting that community collaboration. We're looking at being more effective and I think kinder about how we support and advise the operation of the transit district. There are a few other things I can say, but here's the other thing. We have a new executive director coming in at Columbia Pacific Economic Development. We have an offer made and accepted, but it can't be made public. I can't share the name, but it's a person with experience not only in planning, but in working with ODOT and in doing economic development, the three-legged stool. So I'm looking for really enhanced economic support all through the region, which is Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Western Washington County, in all of those areas, because the demands, because of the Habitat Conservation Plan and the FEMA BIOP, we need more sustainable economic development that provides adequate and stable income and helps heal the planet. Transportation is an integral part of that. So that's happy, good news. And as, again, Ariane Colombo is headed off to graduate school because she's brilliant. She's going to get her PhD. John Audley is trying to get us an ADU in Clatsop County. God love him. He's a consultant for Haciendas. They had money from the legislature. And we've been talking for literally years about this. We tried to get it in Seaside, it didn't work. We tried to get it in Cannon Beach, it didn't work. It looks like it's going to work in Astoria.
I'm sorry, you said an ADU?
An accessory dwelling unit. The legislature authorized up to $140,000 toward the cost of an accessory dwelling unit with a homeowner who was, I would say, medium income, in order to have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, that was available for a previously homeless person or about to be homeless person. So we're looking at doing that in Warrenton because they were capable and responsive. So God love the staff and the execution there. But the point is, as Commissioner Webb pointed out, as Chair Banks pointed out, as County Manager always points out, we have relationships with people who have resources. We urge them to help us bring them home to Clatsop County because we are the ambassadors, we are the scouts for the resources. And we're hoping for more child care so we can keep our ODOT staffer in town because he's got a 4-month-old infant. And if we can't get some infant care, I mean, those are the very personal kinds of challenges that people are facing. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Two very hard acts to follow. Had a recent conversation with the manager of Northwest Senior and Disability Services. I was offered the chair position for that board, but have turned it down because I feel like that board deserves an in-person chair, which, because of my full-time job and then also our volunteer status as a county commissioners, that I felt that
Zooming and trying to chair a meeting via Zoom, was not doing, it was doing them a disservice for me to take that position, but then also not be able to create in-person relationships. The distance is just too hard for me to travel on, along with traveling to Salem for other liaison positions. And so I will remain as vice chair happily and have passed that on to Commissioner Bethel. So she'll be able to serve in that position, and my friendship with her will help, you know, communication and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to share with the board that I didn't turn it down for any other reason other than I just wish to be in person. And I feel like, I mean, we do such great work here in person that it would be a disservice to them for me to try to do something different, just so that I could wear the label. And then moving on from that, I didn't participate. My daughter participated in the Miss Oregon competition here recently. She previously did her teen competition, but she participated in the Community Service Initiative program. I love, if you've never gone to a Miss Oregon competition in Seaside, you need to do it. They've been doing it there for 75 years. And it is women, inspiring women to be leaders. And you see doctors, nurses, neonatal care leaders. These women are driven, they're amazing, and just listening to them and being in their presence, and it inspires me to continue to set goals for myself, and just in regards to us as a board and as a commission and the efforts that we go through. My daughter received a scholarship, so I'm going to toot her horn, a $500 scholarship, so for her community service initiative. And so it's inspiring. And on that note, I received an email from our PAC West fellows and saw that there were over 400 mental health bills that were placed in legislature just this previous session. And so many of them, I mean, granted, we'll receive our regular funding that is to CBH and so on and so forth, but so many of them weren't applicable to us. And I'd like to see that change, because our kids deserve attention here. I want us to be more proactive versus reactive, especially with our drug and alcohol crisis that we have in our state. And so that's my new goal. And I'm going to continue the child care goal, because babies, they are important too. But you'll notice a theme with me, it's always pediatrics. And so, but yes, and moving on, we will have our next child care committee, our child care strategic task force meeting here next week. And so we will be developing the grant plans. It looks like we're going to be focusing on micro grants, a continual micro grant process. That is yet to be fully solidified, but that was the conversation that we were having previously, that a child care provider, if they have a need, be it a bathroom or, you know, some sort of capital improvement, or if it's babies, or if it's, you know, trying to pay for additional staff, we are going to be focusing on micro grants this upcoming session until we've exhausted our year of funding. But I hope it never exhausts, because we're starting to dial into our local businesses. And after our ARPA funds are exhausted for childcare, I will be focusing on us, because we are a local business too. And so I feel like that we need to be donating to that cause on a regular basis. I feel like we need to lead by example. So just fair warning, County Manager. But
Could I?
yeah.
When we were talking earlier today about the housing that's going to be developed in Warrenton, my request is that whenever we're looking at housing developments, we ask people, and is there room for a child care facility here, in-home or a center, so that that's just standard. I don't know if that's legal, but I hope we could do it.
I like how she's looking, sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Webb. Yes.
There are, the entire time I was on NOAA, with all of the new developments, it's extremely hard to get, though it's the tax credit issue. And it's, you know, there is actually, there is some land near the new Trillium House, which my dream has always been to raise the money and buy it and figure out a way to put a childcare facility on it. But it is a problem, just as you know, it is. It's just one of those things in the legislation for, you know, tax, for tax issues. So it's just, that's the kind of thing we have to work on, I guess, with our legislators.
Yeah, well, see, another goal, you've been warned. So anyhow, that would be the end of my liaison report. Just happily moving along and working with kids. It's great. County managers report.
Chair Bangs, members of the board, thank you. Just responding a little bit about the topic that we were just talking about, which is childcare, is that we are going through a process right now. As we had discussed with your board, we had identified county properties that might be available for both housing as well as childcare and social services. And we had stopped that process to develop some criteria about how we would assess suitability as we look at that. And so with Alyssa being here now, we have started that process. And so whether or not it can be part of a tax credit project, it may be something that there is a suitable piece of county property that might assist in getting some additional childcare, social services, housing built. So just want to let your board know that we are going through that process. I did want to mention that Anthony Pope, our county counsel, is not here tonight. He's at the county council's conference down in Salishan, and so I'm so gratified that nothing legal came up. Thank you for that.
Give me time.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to, I mentioned this earlier, but I am having continual conversations with Charter about how to fill in some of the remaining gaps with all the investments that they're making, and that looks positive. But we'll continue to work through that, and I'll come back to your board with any updates. I did want to mention, too, that Alyssa will be providing an update on some of the work we're doing with housing. We did kind of a little bit of a preview tonight, but there's much more in-depth activities happening. So she'll be here at the next work session to describe what she's doing, but to also get your board's feedback on what you think we should be working on. So that'll be at the next work session. And then, as you know, you've received notice, I believe all of you, about the draft HCP being out, and so that's out there, and there'll be a meeting in August, I think it's August 22nd, to kind of receive an overview of it. So that continues on. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you. I just want to make note that this is probably the first meeting that we've never had any business. So is there anything?
In my 4 years, this is the first time, so.
Yeah. Is there anything for the good of the order? Other than how exciting this moment is? Excellent. So I move to adjourn.